Okay, Thomas Fried here. Yesterday I dropped a video, actually it came out this morning, that proves the federal income tax can no longer be enforced by the IRS or the DOJ in court in the manner that they have been doing so for the last 65 years. The Supreme Court ruled in June that the federal income tax is an indirect tax. It is not, they say, a non-apportioned direct tax, which is what the IRS has been arguing, has been assessing as a function of direct taxation, and which the DOJ has been arguing in order to take subject matter jurisdiction in every single legal action they file in the courts, both civil and criminal. They claim subject matter jurisdiction under the 16th Amendment to enforce this non-apportioned direct tax it allegedly authorizes. But the Supreme Court says it's indirect under Article 1, Section 8. Subject matter jurisdiction doesn't exist. So, if you want to know the truth, you need to get yourself over to taxfreedom.com and read the article I posted that explains how this Supreme Court decision destroys the IRS's ability to assess income tax as a direct tax, and it destroys the DOJ's ability to take jurisdiction in any tax trial. They've been ruling that it's frivolous to argue it's not a non-apportioned direct tax, and that Article 1 isn't part of the income taxing powers. It's not necessary. It's authorized under the 16th Amendment, and that's where they take jurisdiction, and everything else has been argued frivolous. Well, the Supreme Court just ruled they're the ones with the frivolous argument, not the citizens. It's indirect, which means there's no tax on labor. It's an impost on foreigners, duty on exports, and excise on corporations, licenses, and commodities. So, it's been exposed that the federal income tax is a complete and total fraud. It's been exposed. The DOJ's got the head so far up their ass. Every time they open their mouth, nothing but shit spews forth all over the walls of the courtroom, coating it with crap. That's why it stinks. That's why the courtroom smells so bad now. They're dirty, dirty. They've been enforcing a constitutional power that never existed. What does exist is the second plank of the Communist Manifesto, and that's what they've been enforcing. Communism, a heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. That's where you find graduated tax brackets, is in the Communist Manifesto. The Constitution calls for uniformity of indirect taxation. And it is indirect, not direct. It's the government that's been frivolous. So for over 65 years now, the United States government, the federal judges of the district and lower court and the Department of Justice have been lying to the American people. They've been defrauding them, stealing from them, robbing them, imprisoning them, literally taking lives and wives over the frustration and desperation of a government that doesn't understand the difference between tyranny and despotism and legitimate indirect taxation of activities and transactions only subject to impost, the taxation of foreign activity, duties, the taxation of exported goods, and excise, the taxation of the manufacture, consumption, and sale of commodities within this country, licenses to pursue certain occupations, and the corporate privilege, where income is the yardstick that measures the amount of tax owed on the impost, duty, or excise. But if there is no impost, duty, or excise tax that exists, then you don't just tax the yardstick, income. Income is the yardstick that measures the amount of tax that's owed. It's not the object of the tax. It's not the subject of taxation. It's not a taxable activity or transaction. Income, or wages and salaries, are a function of the fruits of your labor, which is not a focus, it's not an object or a subject of federal taxation. The federal judges have been lying, using judicial sedition, judicial legislation, to rewrite and reverse the original Supreme Court decision that it is indirect, because the Supreme Court cited repeatedly in this recent decision, they cite Bruce Shaber as the cause for it being an indirect tax. It's not direct. They've been lying to us. So the Supreme Court ruling in Moore et Ux v. the United States in June 2024, this year, destroys the ability of the federal government to continue prosecuting federal income tax cases in the federal courts in the manner that they have been. It destroys the ability of the IRS to continue assessing taxes based on it's direct and non-apportioned, everything you do. We don't need an imposted duty or an excise. That's frivolous. They are lying to you. And this Supreme Court decision is all you need to stop any tax case in the country tomorrow, criminal or civil. Every single tax case in the country can be stopped immediately simply by calling the court's attention to what they ruled in Moore. It's indirect, not direct. That destroys the alleged subject matter jurisdiction claimed by the government in the case. So the federal government, the judges, the DOJ, the IRS, they've all been lying to the American people for 65 years. They're stealing the fruits of your labor. They're not enforcing any constitutional taxation. But now, after 100 years, or at least the last 65 years, of fraudulent unconstitutional enforcement of a non-existent direct tax without limitation. It doesn't exist. The tax the courts have been taking jurisdiction to enforce doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in law. It doesn't exist under the Constitution. It doesn't exist under the 16th Amendment, which cannot confer jurisdiction on a court because there's no enabling enforcement clause in the amendment to authorize Congress, constitutionally authorize Congress to write any new law to force any power created by the amendment. And of course, if the court can't show that Congress was constitutionally authorized to write the law that the claims they've brought to the court to be enforced are based on, because they have to show that Congress was constitutionally authorized to write the law that they've brought the court to have enforced. That's why there's an enabling enforcement clause in the Constitution, the original, necessary, and proper enabling enforcement clause of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, which makes all of the original taxing powers and other powers granted by the Constitution to the government to enjoy and exercise, they're all made enforceable with law from Congress. And that's why every amendment where new powers are created has its own enabling enforcement clause. And the lack of such clause in the 16th Amendment is one of the reasons why the Supreme Court has ruled it's not direct and no new powers are created. Because if there's no enabling enforcement clause in the 16th Amendment, how would Congress claim to be constitutionally authorized to write new law to enforce a new taxing power allegedly created by the amendment? And of course, if it's a direct tax without apportionment or any other limitation, that would certainly be a new power, because before the 16th Amendment, you had all direct taxes had to be apportioned to the states for payment and laid in proportion to the census. So a direct, unlimited tax after the 16th Amendment can only be, as alleged, a result of the 16th Amendment. But without an enabling enforcement clause, you can't show that Congress was constitutionally authorized to write any new law for this new power. So it can't be enforced in the court because they can't take subject matter jurisdiction. Because subject matter jurisdiction requires 3 elements. 1, constitutional power granted to Congress to exercise. 2, constitutional authority given to Congress to write law, to administer to and enforce the power granted in 1 to exercise. And 3, Congress has to have exercised that constitutional legislative prerogative to actually write a statute, a law, enact legislation that does what the Constitution allows, that the enabling enforcement clause makes enforceable with law. And if any element is missing, the power granted, the authority to write law, or the actual legislation, the court lacks subject matter jurisdiction. It lacks the ability to take subject matter jurisdiction over the claim. And that is precisely the case that we have with income tax for the last 65 years. The courts have lacked subject matter jurisdiction for 65 years to enforce the federal income tax. It's all been a fraud. Every single one of the federal courts rendering a decision, both civil and criminal, have done so unconstitutionally. This is a huge $1 trillion class action suit going after these pigs for the homes lost, the cars lost, the salaries lost, the wages lost, the lives lost, the wives lost. Every single bit of it. It was all done by fraud, a fraudulent claim to a jurisdiction under the 16th Amendment that never existed. That never existed. It was all fraud. Fraud vitiates everything, and there is no statute of limitations on recovering damages incurred by fraud. This is a $1 trillion class action lawsuit that should result in this decision, and nobody in the country except me even understands what it means. How is this possible? Where the fuck are the lawyers? How is it possible? No attorney challenges subject matter jurisdiction in tax cases. They all accept this incredible nonsense. It's a direct non-apportioned tax. Where's the enabling enforcement clause? We don't need one. Doesn't that engineer an inherent and irreconcilable conflict with Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, and Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4? Oh, we're going to ignore that and use law to destroy law. You Orwellian pigs. Okay, where am I liable for the tax? Oh, we don't need liability. That's regulatory deference under Chevron. Well, what about 1461 that makes a whole class of tax collectors liable for the payment of the tax? Shouldn't you enforce the written law, not your imagination? Under regulatory deference? The IRS is a criminal operation in its current form. Assessing the tax is a direct, non-apportioned tax. The circuit courts that ruled it's a direct, non-apportioned tax are seditionists. They're using judicial legislation to rewrite both the Constitution and to reverse the Supreme Court's true and original holding, which is easy to read. If Brushaber confuses you at all, you go right to the next case, Stanton v. Baltic Mining, where it's incredibly clear and very short. No new powers are created. How could any new power be created when there's no enabling enforcement clause to write law to enforce the power? Of course there's no new power created. It simply declares income to be a function of indirect taxation and removes the confusion between income streaming from a property rather than from labor. So the federal courts have been deceiving the American people, lying to them, cheating them out of the fruits of their own labor, and enforcing an unconstitutional system of graduated, non-uniform, direct taxation of labor rather than a constitutional indirect taxation of certain activities, transactions, and persons, like the corporate person who is inherently subject to tax. Everything they do is taxable because it's all earned under the privilege of incorporation. But no such privilege exists for the American citizens to enjoy. They earn money not by privilege, but by exercise of their constitutional right to work. And rights aren't taxable. Neither the possession nor the exercise. Okay, let's go ahead. If you need help understanding any of this that I'm talking about, you need to go to taxfreedom.com and start reading. If you are in court with the Department of Justice over IRS alleged income tax under Title 26, not ATF, but Title 26 personal income tax, you need to contact me at irszoom.com. We can shut your case down next week. All you need to do is file the motion that says, hey guys, dismiss for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. The court's assumed the wrong jurisdiction. It's indirect, not direct, and you can't fix it because the IRS assessed it based on this belief it was direct. They didn't apply any imposed duty or excise, so the claim for tax, the assessment, can't be enforced because it doesn't have an enforceable constitutional foundation behind the administrative process. So, if you need help, taxfreedom.com, IRSZoom.com. Let me kill the IRS for you. Let me stop the DOJ in court. Let me terminate your federal tax case in court, civil and criminal. They've already screwed it up by declaring jurisdiction under the 16th Amendment. If your attorney didn't challenge it, it doesn't matter. Jurisdiction can be challenged at any point in time, and if it's discovered the jurisdiction doesn't exist, the case ends. It must be dismissed, and in this case, it's got to be dismissed with prejudice because they can never go back and repair the bad assessment for a direct tax instead of by application of imposed duty or excise. Dismissed with prejudice. And anybody who's in jail because they were incarcerated at any time in the last year, class action lawsuit. Class action lawsuit. Everybody's been put in jail by a court without subject matter jurisdiction to conduct trials under Title 26 charges, to enforce a direct non-apportioned tax, which is what they've been claiming they're doing. They openly do it. This is the basis for going after you. Oh, look, all these circuit courts said, Bruce Shaber said it's a direct non-apportioned tax. All those circuit courts were fucking communists who couldn't read, apparently, and didn't understand the Constitution, and therefore probably were never qualified to be judges. These bastards need to be removed from the bench. It's clear. They have no intent on enforcing constitutional law or its limitations. They're just running amok, imposing their philosophical agenda, communism, socialism, to convert and pervert the constitutional republic into the social democracy like in Europe that they want to have. So they all get together and rule the planet from one world council, a global elite that rules the socialist planet, that enslaves the population to the greed, the wishes, the desires for power and to rule that socialism appears to instill in the individuals who aspire to it. It's all unconstitutional. It's all gotta go. Taxfreedom.com, IRSZoom.com. Share this video, talk it up, spread it around. Everybody in the country needs to know this. If you know anyone who's being attacked by the IRS, who's in court with the IRS, who's in jail, who's being prosecuted criminally, you need to send them this video and they need to get in touch with me. We can shut this down. The Supreme Court has reaffirmed the original ruling. The income tax is dead. It's dead in the courts. Everybody in the country should claim exempt and stop filing. Claim exempt and stop filing. Claim exempt and stop filing. No return is required. Form 1040 isn't allowed to be used within the substitute for return procedures. All of this information is documented at taxfreedom.com. The entire thing has been nothing but constitutional fraud since World War II and the victory tax. Nothing but constitutional fraud. Get help right now. Help me terminate the income tax. Help me get the IRS out of the lives of American citizens and back on the job of collecting from the corporate subjects. Help me terminate the judicial legislation that's destroying America, perverting the republic, and turning us into what? You tell me what it's turning into. I don't recognize it. Do you? If you do, send me an email. Explain it to me. What's going on and why, where we're being led, and to what end. I'm telling you, it's all a fraud. And we now have the power to end it. The Supreme Court has given us what we need. the ruling that reaffirms the original holding and terminates the unconstitutional enforcement that we've been suffering under and watching destroy America as it decimates the American people and empowers the federal government to become the unlimited, omnipotent threat that the Founding Fathers knew such a government would be. Taxfreedom.com. Help me kill it, folks. Help me kill it. This is real. We can do it. I need your help. I can't do it alone. I've done all the work. I've laid out all the law. It's all at taxfreedom.com. I'll help you at irszoom.com for $50 a letter. And I haven't decided. I guess I'll charge $1,000 to kill your case in court, civil or criminal. That's the price I charge for unlimited use of my library at irszoom.com to answer letters from the IRS or to deal with the DOJ in court over personal income tax allegations, both civil and criminal. So if you want help, if you want to end this system, if you, like everybody else, knows there's something very, very wrong and un-American with the way the IRS has been operating, you need to get over to these websites and read and find out, because I've laid it all out for you and explained exactly what it is that's so very, very wrong. And it starts with this fraudulent and false claim for the last 65 years to a subject matter jurisdiction to enforce a direct non-apportioned tax under the 16th Amendment. Which was all a lie. All a lie. Everything since World War II about the tax system has been a lie. Now, all of these videos explaining the income tax are laid out at my Thomas Fried channel. So if you don't want to read it all, you can go listen to the videos. It's the Thomas Fried channel that's linked up on taxfreedom.com. Just go there and click on the link to start listening to the videos that explain everything about the fraudulent application of the income tax that I've been teaching for 35 years. And that the government says, oh no, that's all frivolous. That turns out it's the government with the frivolous argument. I'm telling you, people, you can have fun with this in court. The judges are going to have to bend over backwards and just take it. There's nothing left for them to go to, and the DOJ has already started refusing to argue, claiming jurisdiction can be taken under statutes alone. We don't need a constitutional authority. The statute says we can enforce any tax. Yeah, except the Communist Manifesto version. You can only enforce a tax that's been legislated that's actually authorized under the Constitution. That's what any tax means. It doesn't mean any goddamn fucking thing you dream up, like stealing money under the guise and pretense of taxation, but which actually is nothing more than a slave peonage enforcement system where the American people have been reduced to the role of peons and serfs that exist only to service the $36 trillion in debt unconstitutionally borrowed by Congress from the Federal Reserve Bank's unconstitutional monopoly on currency and credit and interest rates. Where's that in the Constitution? You want to tell me? Yeah, we all know, don't we? It ain't. That's the fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto, the Federal Reserve Bank. That's what's really going on. Not taxation, but the enforcement of communist, socialist wealth redistribution to divide the people, set the nation at war with one another under a class warfare system that destroys unified representation by making it impossible for any politician to represent the whole of the American people. They have to pick one class or the other, or they never get elected in their district. There is no more unified representation. It's been reduced to a system of class warfare that has both sides, the entire population, constantly calling for government to step in and limit the other side, or eliminate their position, or tax them higher, or tax us less. And you can write different law for different classes of people, because that's what the income tax brackets do. And once you create that false belief, you lose the concept of the law applies equally to everyone, because you got different laws that apply to different groups. allegedly. None of it is constitutional. None of it is constitutional. The law applies to everyone, and either every law is uniform in its application and force and effect, or you don't have law, you have crime, you have prejudice, you have tyranny, you have despotism, you have discrimination. And it doesn't matter on what basis that is done. And Congress has no power to discriminate against the American people, to break them into tax brackets. It has that power to discriminate over inanimate commodities and articles of commerce, and it has that power to discriminate against inanimate corporations. It does not have that power to discriminate against the American people on any basis whatsoever. The whole income tax has been one great, big, huge fraud. And it's over under this Moore et Ux decision as of June 20th, 2024. All that needs to be done is file the motion to dismiss for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. And the DOJ is finished. And the IRS's assessment is unsustainable in the court. So if you want your freedom back, you want your country back, share this video, pass it around, make it go viral. This is information that every single American citizen in the country needs to be aware of. And until that conscious awakening occurs, you're all going to be slaves. Your children will be slaves. Your grandchildren will be slaves. And everything will be controlled. If you want your freedom back, you better get informed, you better get educated, and you better start speaking up and speaking out, exercising your rights, and attacking the beast, because that's what the IRS, the DOJ, and the federal judges have become. The beast, enforcing a system of slavery, not indirect taxation. Taxfreedom.com. Get over and start reading. It's all right there. Black and white, plain as day. You can print it out, show it to anyone, start teaching it yourself. If you care about your country, your freedom, your quality of life, and your ability to sustain what you have now or had 4 years ago. You want it back? Or you want to go forward with gasoline at $7 a gallon, energy unaffordable? What do you want, America? It's up to you. Start talking, share the video. This is Thomas Freed, taxfreedom.com, IRSZoom.com, and Liberty Works Radio Network every Thursday at 6 p.m. for an hour. We do the Truth Attack Hour. We'll see you there.